Okay, well, it's a little different this time because I had to go somewhere else. So Romeo, our cat, is not able to be here for the reading. But that's okay because I'm just experimenting with different ways of doing this. And I'm also using my husband's book stand and his little reading light. So let us begin. Kino began to cry, and Kino's father did not stop him. He stooped and gathered Gia into his arms and carried him into the house. And Kino's mother ran out of the kitchen and put down a mattress, and Kino's father laid Gia upon it. "It is better that he is unconscious," he said gently. "Let him remain so until his own will wakes him. I will sit by him." "I will rub his hands and feet," Kino's mother said sadly. Kino could say nothing. He was still crying, and his father let him cry for a while. Then he said to his wife, "Heat a little rice soup for Kino and put some ginger in it. He feels cold." Now Kino did not know until his father spoke that he did feel cold. He was shivering and he could not stop crying. Setsu came in. She had not seen the big wave, for her mother had closed the windows and drawn the curtains against the sea. But now she saw Gia lying white pale and still. "Is Gia dead?" she asked. "No, Gia is living," her father replied. "Why doesn't he open his eyes?" she asked again. "Soon he will open his eyes," the father replied. "If Gia is not dead, why does Kino cry?" Setsu asked. "You are asking too many questions," her father. Okay, so tricky. Whoa. Hold on. Yeah. Oh no, well, maybe we'll try without the light, her father told her. "Go back to the kitchen and help your mother." So Setsu went back again, sucking her forefinger and staring at Gia and Kino as she went. And soon the mother came in with the hot rice soup, and Kino drank it. He felt warm now and he could stop crying, but he was still frightened and sad. "What will we say to Gia when he wakes?" he asked his father. "We will not talk," his father replied. "We will give him warm food and let him rest. We will help him to feel he still has a home." "Here?" Kino asked. "Yes," his father replied. "I've always wanted another son, and Gia will be that son. As soon as he knows that this is his home, then we must help him to understand what has happened." So they waited for Gia to wake. "I don't think Gia can ever be happy again," Kino said sorrowfully. "Yes, he will be happy someday," his father said, "for life is always stronger than death. Gia will feel when he wakes that he can never be happy again. He will cry, and we must let him cry. But he cannot always cry. After a few days he will stop crying all the time. He will cry only part of the time. He will sit sad and quiet. We must allow him to be sad, and we must not make him speak. But we will do our work and live as we always do. Then one day he will be hungry, and he will eat something that our mother cooks, something special, and he will begin to feel better. He will not cry any more in the daytime, but only at night. We must let him cry at night. But all the time his body will be renewing itself, his blood flowing in his veins, his growing bones, his mind beginning to think again, will make him live." "He cannot forget his father and mother and his brother," Kino exclaimed. "He cannot, and he should not forget them," Kino's father said. "Just as he lived with them alive, he will live with them dead. Someday he will accept their death as part of his life. He will weep no more. He will carry them in his memory and his thoughts. His flesh and blood are part of them. So long as he is alive, they too will live in him. The big wave came, but it went away. The sun shines again, birds sing, and earth flowers. Look out over the sea now." This is giving me trouble. I don't want to start over, so we're just going to keep going. And ignore these alerts. Okay, Kino looked out the open door, and he saw the ocean sparkling and smooth. The sky was blue again. A few clouds on the horizon were the only sign of what had passed, except for the empty beach. How cruel it seems for the sky to be so clear and the ocean so calm, Kino said. But his father shook his head. No, it is wonderful that after the storm the ocean grows calm and the sky is blue once more. It was not the ocean or the sky that made the evil storm. Who made it? Kino asked. He let tears roll down his cheeks, because there was so much he could not understand. But only his father saw them, and his father understood. Ah, no one knows who makes evil storms, his father replied. We only know that they come. When they come, we must live through them as bravely as we can, and after they are gone, we must feel again how wonderful is life. Every day of life is more valuable now than it was before the storm. But Gia's family, his father and mother and brother, and all the other good fisher folk who are lost, Kino whispered. He could not forget the dead. Now we must think of Gia, his father reminded him. He will open his eyes at any minute, and we must be there, you to be his brother, and I to be his father. Call your mother too, and little Setsu. Now they heard something. Gia's eyes were still closed, but he was sobbing in his sleep. Kino ran to fetch his mother and Setsu, and they gathered about his bed, kneeling on the floor so as to be near Gia when he opened his eyes. In a few minutes, while they all watched, Gia's eyelids fluttered on his pale cheeks, and then he opened his eyes. He did not know where he was. He looked from one face to the other as though they were strangers. Then he looked up into the beams of the ceiling and around the white walls of the room. He looked at the blue-flowered quilt that covered him. None of them said anything. They continued to kneel about him, waiting. But Setsu could not keep quiet. She clapped her hands and laughed. "Oh, Gia has come back," she cried. "Gia, did you have a good dream?" The sound of her voice made him fully awake. "My father, my mother," he whispered. Kino's mother took his hand. "I will be your mother now, dear Gia," she said. "I will be your father," Kino's father said. "I am your brother now, Gia," Kino faltered. "Oh, Gia will live with us," Setsu said joyfully. Then Gia understood. He got up from the bed and walked to the door that stood open to the sky and the sea. He looked down the hillside to the beach, where the fishing village had stood. There was only beach, and all that remained of the 20 and more houses were a few foundation posts and some big stones. The gentle little waves of the ocean were playfully carrying the light timber that had made the houses, and throwing it on the sands and snatching it away again. The family had followed Gia, and now they stood about him. Kino did not know what to say, for his heart ached for his friend brother. Kino's mother was wiping her eyes, and even little Setsu looked sad. She took Gia's hand and stroked it. "Gia, I will give you my pet duck," she said. But Gia could not speak. He kept on looking at the ocean. "Gia, your rice broth is growing cold," Kino's father said. "We ought all to eat something," Kino's mother said. "I have a fine chicken for dinner." "I'm hungry," Setsu cried. "Come, my son," Kino's father said to Gia. They persuaded him gently, gathering around him, and they entered the house again. In the pleasant, cozy room, they all sat down about the table. Gia sat with the others. He was awake. He could hear the voices of Kino's family, and he knew that Kino sat beside him. But inside, he still felt asleep. He was very tired, so tired that he did not want to speak. He knew that he would never see his father and mother any more, or his brother, or the neighbors and friends of the village. He tried not to think about them or to imagine their quiet bodies floating under the swelling waves. "Eat, Gia," Kino whispered. "The chicken is good." Gia's bowl was before him untouched. He was not hungry. But when Kino begged him, he took up his porcelain spoon and drank a little of the soup. It was hot and good, and he smelled its fragrance in his nostrils. He drank more, and then he took up his chopsticks and ate some of the meat and rice. His mind was still unable to think, but his body was young and strong and glad of the food. Sorry about these very awkward page changes. We're going to get a better system going soon, I hope. When they had all finished, Kino said, "Shall we go up the hillside, Gia?" But Gia shook his head. "I want to go to sleep again," he said. Kino's father understood. "Sleep is good for you," he said, and he led Gia to his bed. And when Gia had laid himself down, he covered him with the quilt and shut the sliding panels. Gia is not yet ready to live, he told Kino. We must wait. The body began to heal first, and Kino's father, watching Gia tenderly, knew that the body would heal the mind and the soul. Life is stronger than death, he told Kino again and again. But each day, Gia was still tired. He did not want to think or to remember. He only wanted to sleep. He woke to eat and then to sleep, and when Kino's mother saw this, she led him to the bedroom, and Gia sank each time into the soft mattress spread on the floor in the quiet, clean room. He fell asleep almost at once, and Kino's mother covered him and went away. All through these days, Kino did not feel like playing. He worked hard beside his father in the fields. They did not talk much, and neither of them wanted to look at the sea. It was enough to look at the earth, dark and rich beneath their feet. One evening, Kino climbed the hill behind the farm and looked toward the volcano. The heavy cloud of smoke had long ago gone away, and the sky was always clear now. He felt happier to know that the volcano was no longer angry, and he went down again to the house. On the threshold, his father was smoking his usual evening pipe. In the house, his mother was giving Setsu her evening bath. Is Gia asleep already? Kino asked his father. Yes, and it is a good thing for him, his father replied. Sleep will strengthen him, and when he wakes he will be able to think and remember. But should he remember such sorrow? Kino asked. Yes, his father replied. Only when he dares to remember his parents will he be happy again. They sat together, father and son, and Kino asked still another question. Father, are we not very unfortunate people to live in Japan? Why do you think so? His father asked in reply. Because the volcano is behind our house and the ocean is in front, and when they work together for evil to make the earthquake and the big wave, then we are helpless. Always many of us are lost. To live in the midst of danger is to know how good life is, his father replied. But if we are lost in the danger? Kino asked anxiously. To live in the presence of death makes us brave and strong, Kino's father replied. That is why our people fear it. To die a little later or a little sooner does not matter, but to live bravely, to love life, to see how beautiful the trees are in the mountains, yes, and even the sea, to enjoy work because it produces food for life. In these things, we Japanese are a fortunate people. We love life because we live in danger. We do not fear death because we understand that life and death are necessary to each other. What is death? Kino asked. Death is the great gateway, Kino's father said. His face was not at all sad. Instead, it was quiet and happy. The gateway where? Kino asked again. Kino's father smiled. Can you remember when you were born? Kino shook his head. I was too small. Kino's father laughed. I remember very well. Oh, how hard you thought it was to be born. You cried and you screamed. Didn't I want to be born? Kino asked. This was very interesting to him. You did not, his father told him, smiling. You wanted to stay just where you were in the warm, dark house of the unborn. But the time came to be born and the gate of life opened. Did I know it was the gate of life? Kino asked. You did not know anything about it, and so you were afraid of it, his father replied. But see how foolish you were? Here we were waiting for you, your parents, already loving you and eager to welcome you, and you have been very happy, haven't you? Until the big wave came, Kino replied. Now I am afraid again because of the death that the big wave brought. You are only afraid because you don't know anything about death, his father replied. But someday you will wonder why you were afraid, even as today you wonder why you feared to be born. Stop there.